He was a Hall of Fame football player, Hollywood star, who became one of the most polarizing figures in the world after being tried and acquitted in a double murder. Tonight, OJ Simpson has died from cancer at the age of 76. Good evening. Welcome to Fox 7 News at 5. Now simulcast on Fox 11 Plus. I'm Alex Michelson.
And I'm Marla Tejas here for Christine Devine. His rise to stardom and stunning fall from grace was a story that has deep roots here in Southern California. And tonight, we do have team coverage on OJ Simpson's death, from the infamous Bronco chase that led to his arrest to the trial that sent shockwaves across the nation.
First, we look back at how his story became entrenched in American culture.
OJ Simpson had it all. After winning the Heisman Trophy at USC, he became one of pro football's greatest running backs. Simpson parlayed such stardom into a successful acting career, but his fall from grace began in June 1994.
Mr. Simpson is a fugitive of justice right now.
A low-speed police pursuit on the freeways and streets of L.A. drew the eyes of the world to a white Bronco with Simpson inside, a televised media spectacle that some 95 million people watched live. He was charged with double murder for the brutal killings of ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman. What came next? A trial that captivated the nation and a verdict that drew a divisive reaction.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
While cleared of criminal charges in criminal court, Simpson was found guilty in a civil trial and ordered to pay $33.5 million in punitive and compensatory damages to the Brown and Goldman families. Over the years, the story of O.J. Simpson has generated a tide of tell-all books, movies, studies, and even debate over questions about race relations and celebrity culture. Simpson himself even sold a 2006 book titled If I Did It, and gave a hypothetical account of murders he had always denied committing. But Simpson ultimately went to prison in 2008. He was found guilty of armed robbery and kidnapping after he and a group of men broke into a Las Vegas hotel room and took sports memorabilia that Simpson claimed belonged to him. After serving 9 years of a 33-year sentence, he was released on parole in 2017. In the years that followed, Simpson became known for posting videos on social media, and it was social media where his death was announced by his family. Posting on X, they say he died from cancer at age 76, surrounded by his children and grandchildren.
Our team coverage continues with reaction tonight from some of those closely involved in O.J. Simpson's murder trial.
Fox 11's Phil Schuman, he covered that so-called trial of the century for 9 months, and he now joins us with more.
Phil, bring us back to that moment.
Well, when we say the trial of the century, we're not exaggerating. He was the most famous person ever to be tried for murder. Wall-to-wall coverage, live on court TV back then, mostly on CNN as well. Local stations with nightly specials, every major paper, magazine, full-time reporters. Again, the most famous man ever to be put on trial for murder in this country, and it was over. That stunning verdict was read, as you just heard. It shocked so many, but pleased others. I was sitting behind Kim Goldman, younger sister of victim Ron Goldman.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman.
In the background, what you heard is a little bit hard to pick up, but will never be forgotten from those of us who were in the courtroom. Those anguished, loud sobs from Ron Goldman's younger sister, Kim. You see her there bent over with her father, Fred. The Brown family, well, the Goldman family and the Brown family victims, of course. But the Goldmans, more so than the Browns, had always kept the focus on Nicole and Ron. Nicole, 35, Ron was just 25 when they were killed. Today, this from Fred Goldman, Ron's father, who sent out a message signed by him and Kim. The news of Ron's killer passing away is a mixed bag of complicated emotions and reminds us that the jury, through grief, is not linear. For 3 decades, we tirelessly pursued justice for Ron and Nicole, despite a civil judgment and his confession in If I Did It. The hope for true accountability has ended. true accountability. So, as you heard, he was found liable for the deaths in that civil suit by a Santa Monica jury, not the downtown LA jury that acquitted him of murder. That civil trial was a unanimous verdict, but remember, it also has a lower standard of proof, and the victims' families got $33 million, but collected just a fraction of that. Remember, OJ moved to Florida to avoid payment, avoid his pension being attached, and then eventually ended up in Vegas where he passed away.
I mean, what was it like being in that courtroom that day?
You know, it wasn't just that day. It was almost a year of drama, and the tension in the hallway, in the courtroom between the Browns and the Simpsons, who once were family, you know, had shared grandchildren, was just so real. And you remember the famous journalist Dominic Dunn, who talked about how he sort of entered into both camps, and in the 9th floor, which is the secure courtroom and the criminal courts building, in the hallways, he had his green alligator leather-bound old-school journal with a fountain pen, and he would go back and forth between the Simpson family, the Brown family, the Goldman family, and then he would write this big column in Vanity Fair every month, Letters from Los Angeles, and you know, everybody was talking about it. O.J. Simpson was such a high-profile figure.
Well, so you were there the day that that verdict was read inside, but then outside, that was a whole other reaction as well. Yeah,
and it was largely split along racial lines. I mean, we're going to talk about a little bit more of that in a minute, but it was largely due to Johnny Cochran and the narrative that the defense created, really. The trial had so many dramatic moments. This was one of the biggest. This was Cochran's closing argument.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
We all know that line. That was a reference to the trial when Simpson was asked by prosecutor Chris Darden to try on the gloves the murderer allegedly wore, and Simpson's theatrical exaggeration of the fact they supposedly were too tight was a key factor in the trial. Again, it lasted almost a year, and that moment during the closing arguments from Cochran sort of summarized the defense narrative that essentially Simpson was framed by a racist LAPD who planted bloody gloves. Remember, one of them was found at the crime scene, one of them was found at the Rockingham house. And, you know, talking with Tom Lang and Phil Van Adder, you remember those two names? They were the lead detectives, not Mark Furman. They were so hurt by that allegation that the LAPD somehow framed this guy years later. But the jury essentially went along with it. Ultimately, there were, I believe, 9 African Americans, 2 Hispanics, and 1 Caucasian on the jury. I think 10 of them were ultimately dismissed. There was all these allegations of jury misconduct. It was, you know, it was Johnny Cochran's show. Lance Ito let him run it, and it resulted in the acquittal.
I have OJ in the car, okay?
It is an image embedded in the minds of millions. Police chasing that white Bronco on the freeways of L.A. as our team coverage on the death of O.J. Simpson continues. Fox 11's Christina Gonzalez picks up that part of the story. She's live for us in Brentwood now with more. Christina.
Yeah, in Rockingham. Now, this is where O.J. Simpson's house used to be. It was torn down a few years back. They even actually... They don't no longer have the number address on the sidewalk. They just don't want to remember that here. And I'm surprised we don't have a lot of people here. A few coming by taking pictures, but it ended up here, the end of the pursuit. I remember because I was following it. Take a look.
This is AC. I have OJ in the car.
June 17th, 1994. Police chase O.J. Simpson in a white Bronco driven by friend and former NFL colleague Al A.C. Cowlings. O.J. just named a suspect in the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. Media line up along the path where supporters cheer O.J. on while no less than 20 helicopters follow the pursuit.
With the flip of the switch, we had, you know, almost 1 million, not 1 million, almost 100 million viewers around the globe watching this surreal event.
Hannah Zoe Turr was on the first helicopter up there.
You remember so clearly every detail.
Christina, everybody, you know, that was alive back then knew where they were when O.J. Simpson ran from the police.
We watched the whole thing on TV.
She and just about everyone stopping by at Best Buy, where many remember every TV for sale had the chase on.
Yes, I was watching, yes.
You and everybody else?
Yes, my boyfriend and my kids.
I must have been, that's 94, so, 11 years old.
Even that young, TMZ's Michael Babcock remembers.
I was a New York Knicks basketball fan, and the Knicks were in the finals, and it was the Knicks and the Rockets, and NBC literally bust into the coverage and showed the chase and then put it on a split screen with the basketball game, and that's something that had been unheard of. This is one of the biggest nights in the entire NBA season, and this was obviously such big news that the world had to know about this.
And it obviously, because of that does explain why so many people started watching the chase, and then it just took from there. It was unbelievable.
And Marla and Alex, today there might be a lot of people who don't really appreciate why there was such a cultural divide back then. We talked to a lot of people, including an academic who says that perhaps O.J. Simpson would not get that same support today. A nation watched the police pursuit of O.J. Simpson in that white Bronco. A young Art Armstrong was among those who cheered him on.
Run, O.J., run.
The then 23-year-old left his home in Compton for a freeway overpass.
I want to see O.J. last ride, if that's what it's going to be.
Nearly 30 years later, Armstrong still believes in O.J.'s innocence.
Almost like a soap opera.
For author Earl Ofari Hutchinson, Simpson's arrest, trial, and ultimate acquittal came when the sting of the acquittal of the LAPD officers responsible for the beating of Rodney King was still fresh.
Rodney King, to many blacks, proved, you see what we've been saying all along. It's an unfair system weighted against African Americans, especially African American males. Now along comes O.J. So it was ripe for the pickings.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
Hutchinson believes even with this reaction to his acquittal,
Jumping up and down, smiles on their faces.
there were those who privately had a different reaction.
People said yes. Many African Americans, and others too, said yes, we're happy. We like O.J., remember him, he's our hero, it's a great thing. But in a quiet moment, privately, many people might say he still might have done it.
But Michael Eason sums it up this way.
See somebody, a black person, win in court is extraordinary.
Well, Hutchinson points out that when O.J. Simpson was convicted in Nevada, there was not that kind of cheerleading or outcry from the black community. I did talk to a man who says, frankly, O.J. to him was never a hero to the black community. He didn't come back to support them. He was, however, a celebrity. Reporting live in Leimert Park, I'm Susan Hirasuna, Fox 11 News.
Susan, thank you so much. Cato Kalin, who was a house guest of O.J. Simpson and testified at the murder trial, he spoke out today.
Now, he addressed the families of Simpson, Nicole Brown, and Ron Goldman.
Foremost, I'd like to express my condolences to the children, to Sydney and to Justin, to Jason and Arnell. They lost their father, and that is never easy. I wish to express my love and compassion to the Goldmans, to Fred and to Kim. I hope you find closure. And finally, to the family of the beautiful Nicole Brown Simpson, may we always cherish her memories. Nicole was a beacon of light that burned bright. May we never forget her.
Earlier, we heard from the family of Ron Goldman, but so far, the family of Nicole Brown has not released a public statement about O.J. Simpson's death.
But right now, we are joined live by Gloria Allred, who represented the family of Nicole Brown. Gloria, we thank you for being with us tonight. No doubt you had your own personal reaction. I want to start, though, by asking you, have you heard from the Brown family?
No, not today. I'm sure they're overwhelmed with so many people in the media trying to get a hold of them. And, my guess is they have a lot of conflicted feelings about O.J. Simpson. Let's remember that a civil jury, after the criminal acquittal, found that he, in fact, was liable for the wrongful death of Nicole Brown and also Ronald Goldman. And the big difference, I think, was that for not only that in a civil lawsuit, as opposed to a criminal trial, less evidence is needed to find someone liable, But in addition, he didn't testify in the criminal case. He invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. He had a right to remain silent, and he did remain silent. But once he was acquitted, he had to testify in the civil lawsuits against him. And he did testify, and guess what? That civil jury did not believe him. They did not find him credible, and that is why they found him civilly liable for killing her. He sat there in that courtroom next to a huge photo of Nicole with her black eye that he had inflicted on her 5 years before he killed her. And she was terrified and had run out of the house and was hiding in the bushes after he beat her up. And even when he was charged with spousal battery, and even after he admitted and pled no contest to spousal battery, what did a judge do 5 years before he killed Nicole? He did not sentence him to even 1 minute in jail for beating his wife. This is why the system fails victims of violence against women, battered women who are either battered spouses or significant others. And this is why 30 years later, the justice system has to be improved. You know what he did? When he killed her, when he killed Nicole, he almost decapitated her. He left her in a pool of blood on her doorstep of the condominium where his young children were sleeping inside. They could have come out and tried to find out where is mommy and opened the door and found their mother in that pool of blood with a knife that had slashed her neck. How horrible. And he did it. He needs to be remembered for what he did. But right now, my heart does go out to the children who are now adults, Sydney and Justin, and to the sisters, the family of Nicole Brown Simpson. They did nothing but love and cherish their nephew and niece. They did nothing but try to love and protect them as their parents did when the family had custody of Sydney and Justin when Simpson was incarcerated. And all I can say is they have been leaders in the violence against women. Let's eliminate domestic violence movement, and I commend them for that.
Gloria, you said you haven't talked to the Brown family today, but your personal reaction when you heard the news about OJ's death?
Well, my personal reaction is that there is still, so much violence against women, and that there is so much kind of adoration of celebrity men. I call it the cult of celebrity that we have developed in this country and in other countries around the world, because celebrities like Simpson they enter our home either through television, through streaming services, through news, and we feel we know them, we feel we admire them. And so when they do something that we think is just not consistent with their image, we tend to reject it. In this case, the defense tried to suggest, and I think your prior interview also suggested, that some believed that there was a racial narrative, which there was. Johnny Cochran ran that in his defense. And it was all about violence against women. But that became like a footnote.
Sure.
And, the jury bought the racial defense, even though there was a mountain of evidence. His blood, his DNA was all over the crime scene.
Right.
So we've got to change it. I represent many victims of racial violence and discrimination, and it should not be stated as a defense if, in fact, it's not true, and it certainly was not true in the criminal case against her.
Gloria Allred, thank you so much. We will see you here tomorrow for The Issue Is. You're going to be here in our studio, so we look forward to that.
So much more to discuss tomorrow.
Yes, okay, we'll see you then.
Thank you, Gloria.
And our coverage continues here tonight, on air and online. For a closer look at how the OJ Simpson trial was covered, head to foxla.com. And again, Gloria Allred tomorrow night at 10:30 on Fox 11.